Let's go to The Age now, and we're back on to this religious freedom bill. It's interesting. They've had a really bad day in Parliament, and every single paper has a story about this religious bill that they want to try and shift the narrative. The PM introduces bill to protect statements of religious belief. Australians will be able to make statements of religious belief under the protection of federal law in draft changes to a bill. That sparked a warning about the risk to people who would lose their jobs or suffer hurt because their sexuality is at odds with someone's faith. The federal government ended months of uncertainty by releasing a draft law to shield people who make a statement of belief as long as it is made in good faith and is in line with the teachings of their religion, is not malicious and does not vilify or harass. I feel that this part is going to be as clear as mud, and like you were saying before, Matt, this is just going to come down to each and individual case that this legislation may have to deal with, right?
Well, yeah, but also, why do we have to shield people for making statements? I mean, I understand if that statement, is designed to cause physical harm to someone, if it is to incite violence, then absolutely that should not be allowed. But with that exception, why do we need statements to shield people? I mean, surely in a democracy where we believe, hopefully still, in free speech, you should be able to say whatever you want. Some people might find what you say offensive. They might find what I say here tonight offensive. They might find what you say offensive. They might find what Jackie Lambie said in the Senate today offensive, possibly. I don't know. But people have a right to speak freely in this country, and it seems that we're having to bring in all these laws to protect, little bits and pieces here and there about what people can and can't say. I just find it extraordinary we've got to this point.
I'm definitely on a unity ticket with you there, and I was just watching, I was just procrastinating at work earlier today, and I was watching an SNL sketch about how people can deal with maybe some family members over Christmas that you don't agree with. If you don't agree with something or you think that someone's going to say offensive, put your AirPods in. So there you go, Apple. You can now sponsor the show, but if you don't like what they're saying, just tune out. Sure. Speaking of tune out, please stick with us because I promise we'll get back on the straight and narrow. Over to the Sydney Morning Herald now. And this is a really interesting yarn by David Crowe, the chief political correspondent for the Nine papers. Most voters want fewer immigrants, a poll has found. The opening of the international border has revived concerns about a big Australia and arrivals from overseas during the pandemic, with 58% of voters backing the idea of restarting migration at a lower level than before the coronavirus. Only 7% of voters want to restart the migration intake at a higher level than in the past, as Prime Minister Scott Morrison opens the border to students, temporary workers and some tourists who have been fully vaccinated. Another 20% want the intake to return to the levels when Australia had permanent migration of about 160,000 each a year, fueling a debate over the economic recovery, the skill shortage and the job opportunities. Matt, how do you think that this will play out in regions other than New South Wales, such as the Northern Territory, such as regional areas that may be screaming out for workers to pick fruit off trees and help with harvest? How do you think that this will go down? Do you think that they would share the same sort of sentiment as these people that have been polled?
I wouldn't have thought so, to be honest with you. I mean, I live in Darwin, which is probably the most multicultural city in the country, and we've been really hurt over the past 2 years by the fact that we haven't had this migration. You talk about picking fruit off trees. I mean, the mango farmers here, have been absolutely desperate. They're seeing their fruit rot on the ground because they can't get those workers in. We've had to do special deals to get them here from East Timor and from the Pacific. So, I'd like to think that people where I live want to see more migration, and that's not the only reason as well. I mean, do we want, our housing market? I know it's been sort of rising probably too quickly for most people's liking over the past 12 months, but, I always think it's a good thing when it's ticking up a little bit. Do we want the housing market to come off? Because, that's what will happen as well if we cut back migration. I mean, this sort of whole issue can get caught up in, sloganeering and a bit of xenophobia and that sort of thing. But migration is good for this country. This country's built on the back of migration, and I think, I'd certainly like to see more of it, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. An absolute melting pot is exactly what we need.